Hello and welcome to the You Love You LLC podcast, where we discuss everything self love and recovery. Today, I've invited a special guest to the show, and I'd like to introduce to some and to present to others Billy from Philly with about a year and a half of sobriety. And I just want to introduce you. Billy, come in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good to be here, Wendell. I'm grateful that you asked me to come and speak with you tonight. Bill, I'm an alcoholic. Call me Billy from Philly because when I started working in the securities business, my desk was in Philadelphia, so everybody didn't have a last name. We were just our name and the place we were from. So I became Billy from Philly. I've worked in the financial services industry since I was 22. It did not help my alcoholism at all to be in that business. My job was for a long time going out entertaining people on the company credit card with the best booze and the best food. And it definitely caught up with me along the way. I grew up with it in a great house. You know, my parents were together. I played hockey growing up, and it gave me a pass on a lot of things. So the times when I was getting unruly with drink in my later teens, I didn't have a big problem when I was younger, but in my later teens and into college, I could pretty much do whatever I wanted and I wouldn't get in trouble. So there was never any consequences. And it definitely contributed to my my attitude towards alcohol, which was always pretty clear. Just went and party, you had fun. My parents would have parties with their friends, and every weekend there'd be a different person who was the party drunk. And they'd make fun of each other, they'd have a good time. And what it turned into for me was I started to be the party drunk at every party.
Wow.
And that was how it started. But I didn't recognize it. Of course, I didn't recognize any of the steps along the way that, how badly my drinking was affecting my life. I'd always figured out an excuse for why something didn't happen, and I never would look to booze. And from then it was, continuing on in my career. Eventually, when work from home hit from COVID, then it was a tequila bottle next to me at my desk, and it wasn't pretty. So I got to the point where I was drinking constantly. Eventually, my coworker boss pulled me aside and said, "You got to get help." And I've been told that before, and I've been through the program before. I've been in AA, and it never worked because I never worked it. And thinking about the topic of this podcast, I can definitely say that self-love and that concept was completely foreign to me in my first trips through this. So I got a trip down to Florida, March 2023. And that's when I met the people at Daylight. They put me on the right path. I learned a lot about myself and how to stay sober. So that's where I am right now.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, and welcome to the podcast, man. We met on a Zoom through the Daylight program. I also came through Daylight. I was in West Palm Beach, and I was in the 28-day detox, and I was inside the compound. I call it a compound. It was like a hospital facility or whatever. But in West Palm Beach, that's the first time I've been to West Palm, and I'm like, I'm on the inside looking out. I should be on the outside looking in, But yes, Daylight really a 28-day detox there for me, and then a 28-day IHP, and we'll get into some of that down there a little further down the road. But welcome to the podcast, man. Self-love, as you say, prior to getting to the Daylight this time, I didn't know anything about self-love myself. So during some journaling and prayer and meditation, they introduced us to meditation when we were in Daylight. And I used to go to sleep, but I soon picked it up after leaving. And it's been the best thing that has happened to me. So during journaling, I was writing one day, and the word, when I wrote you, I forget what it was, but the you looked like a Y with a heart in the middle of it and a U. And it's something dawned on me, said, "You love you." And so I started pursuing that, and one thing led to another. And here we are podcasting with like 12 episodes in, I believe. So
Wow,
I
that's great.
appreciate you coming on. Yes, sir. Thank you. I have developed a few questions and we can talk to them. If we go one way or the other, it has no right or wrong answer. We just gonna chop it up for a minute.
I
Talk
got
about
you, man.
recovery.
Go. Yes.
First one.
What are you thinking about?
Okay. What has been the most important aspect of your self-love journey in maintaining long-term sobriety?
For me, the concept of self-love was difficult to separate from ego in the beginning, because my prior concept of self-love was doing whatever I wanted. It was how I loved myself. I deserved to do things. So that was how I made it like I was rewarding myself. And I could
Yes.
reward myself with anything, with, for good behavior. So I could reward myself with drunken benders. More harming, the thing that I realize now is the way I rewarded myself was I thought I could be a jerk to people. And that was part of my problem, which was my personality, not the booze. So the concept of self-love at the start, kind of like you said, was at daylight, and I was there for 3 or 4 days looking scraggly hard. I got to get my intake picture from daylight, because it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought about the things that they were telling me in the meetings about how I'm not completely worthless. Because at that point, I had looked back on the things in my life without even a clear head, with 4 days sober. I'm trying to look back on things in my life and think about things, and your mind's going in a million directions. But that first note that I heard of, that I'm worth it.
Mm.
And I saw other people who had recovered, the staff at Daylight, people who were in the rooms with me. I saw people struggling, and that oneness was the first kind of inkling that I got that maybe I am worth something. So I went in the bathroom and I shaved.
Mm.
And I looked at a new person in the mirror. And when I came out of the bathroom, the people in the facility didn't even recognize me. The people were sitting around the table in the lunch area going, "Who's that? Like, who's the new guy?" Like, "That's Bill." Like, "That's Bill?" Like, "Yeah, that's Bill." So that little thing showed me that there's things that are worthwhile in me. When I saw my face again and smiled and just felt that light, that's when I realized that there is something worth loving in me.
That's awesome. I do need to put a note in here that Daylight is a facility where we met. I have no affiliation with Daylight of anything besides being an alumni and coming through that program. And it's a pleasure. Daylight is a recovery center down there in West Palm Beach, where I ended up, and obviously Bill ended up. So just to say that. Awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. How has your recovery journey influenced your understanding and practice of self-love? So you mentioned something about the shaving and the new person. I came in on a blackout. I must have been 20 days in a blackout, functioning regularly. And mine wasn't just alcohol. I smoked crack with the best of us. And divorce came final, and I was in Houston, had the house to myself, and it was just a bad day. And I flew back to Pittsburgh and ended up picking up that phone. And the guy on the other line says, "What's your problem?" I said, "Man, I need help." He says, "What you been doing?" I told him. He said, "Man, I got 6.5 years. If you can get to the airplane and get here, we'll take it from there." And I don't know today how I ended up in West Palm Beach. Besides, I'm here in Pittsburgh. There's plenty of recovery places here in Pittsburgh. He picked the phone up, and I've been sober since. So I appreciate you. So how has
And
your recovery journey influenced your understanding and practice of self-love?
well, it's funny because when I was looking over the questions last night and thinking about some things, uh, the meeting that I was at last night, there was a mention of the second step.
Yes.
And coming up with an idea of your higher power. Now, I hadn't thought about the way that it was put to me last night when I did my second step, but in hearing it, I can go back and think about how that was really an important step in my journey to self-love. Because when I examined what my higher power should be, or what I thought my higher power should be, and then started to take a look about what I should be and saw how they mesh together, then I started to think about it in terms of, well, to love myself is really to love God. And that feeling of oneness with God that I developed with my higher power is my form of self-love. And it's what helps me through the hard times, because I know that God isn't with me, God's in me. And
wow.
And that makes me feel love for myself when I feel that way. So it's a huge part of the daily struggle. Yes. When those instances come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share a prayer with you, or a prayer, mantra, whatever you want to call it. But it's something that I say to myself, and it works to me as well as the serenity prayer. A lot of times it's a little bit longer, but it starts off on the me with, may I be happy, may I be at peace, may I be free from suffering, may I live with ease. That's for me. The second verse, may you be happy, may you be at peace, may you be free from suffering, may you live with ease. Typically, that verse may be directed towards someone right in front of me at that point. Right. Someone who I have no idea what's going on in them, but I'm using that to make sure that I recognize what's going on with them. And then the third verse is, may all things be happy, may all things be at peace, may all things live without suffering, and may all things be at ease or live with peace. So the last one is where I really tie myself into the rest of the world. And I know that if God's in me, then God's in you, and God's in everyone.
Yes.
It helps me focus my thinking to say that there's love there. There's love there. I don't know how else to put it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. So we're referencing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. I had to reach somewhere to get it. I couldn't quite remember. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. The second step talks about, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so his reference to the second steps and finding a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. Sometimes I share in the meeting that, yeah, y'all convinced me that my life's unmanageable and I can't do nothing. I'm powerless over alcohol. And now y'all convinced me that I'm insane and I need insane people to help me stay sober. That's the craziest thing I ever seen. But this program works, man. It really does. So the second step is, came to believe. And so you believe. And as you said, you believe that it's in you. So that's awesome.
And that step for me started with the admission that there is a power greater than me, because up until then, I could solve all my problems. I was the greatest power. How could there be a power greater than me? So that admission in itself, to try and recognize what that was. And I think that's really important looking forward when you go into the third step, which is turn my will and my life over to my greater power as I understood him.
Right.
So, or it. But as I understood him, so how could I understand it unless I gave a good looking at what I really thought it was? So that's why that part of recognizing God in me was a part of the second step too, because it didn't require me to never be me again. What it required me to do is to let God be in me what I should be, what I can be.
Yes. I understand. So, page 62 says selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problems. We suffer from 100 forms of fear. So, yes, I do understand. Finding that connection with God. For me, whenever they said God or, higher power, whatever, I had so much religious indoctrination and so much belief in, the religiosity aspect of life. Whenever the big book or anybody in the room said God or spirituality, I was like, I got that, man. I'm a deacon in church. I was a deacon at one time. And, I know the Bible. I got this. But that portion, I never had that one-on-one connection that I have now with the spiritual side of this program.
Right.
So, and the steps helped me find that, along with journaling and shadow work and a lot of other things, which we'll talk about. Great explanation. I appreciate it. What strategies or tools have you found most effective in navigating life's challenges while staying sober?
The basics is where I am right now. Really, I practice it. My girlfriend would describe it as I'm rigid because I have a routine, and that routine gives me something that I can count on in my days, and that's a good thing. Now, when she tells me I'm rigid, I can always say I can always change things around, and I do frequently. Okay. And I'm not rigid to the point where it throws me off my game if I have to miss a meeting or reschedule, my stretch lab or whatever it is. Anything that could throw my rigid schedule off, that doesn't throw me off game. But having those things in my mind that I'm going to do, and it almost helps me when things don't go my way, and I'm able to handle it. So having that routine, it gives me a framework, but what I find is the fulfilling times, like anything else, when things are difficult and you accomplish them, you feel like you accomplished something. So when things don't go my way and I need to look back at the Serenity Prayer, I need to look at God and myself, I need to think of the reasons that things are happening and not think about them. Those things always work. So that routine is a good thing. Certainly going to meetings. I'm a 5 meeting a week guy, and I chair a meeting. I stay involved in the program as far, little thing, big thing. I keep myself occupied with helping people. It's not only do I volunteer with AA, with the AA groups, I also have a separate volunteer that I do with families that have a death in the families. And that's a gift that I would have never been given if I hadn't gotten sober. Awesome. So those things in my life that I now realize are important, those are the things that keep me sober. Those are the things that I get joy out of now. Excellent. So I think if I think about the little things that keep me sober, it is really the joy of little things. It's the joy of sitting outside when I have a coffee and listening to the conversations and not feeling miserable and hungover, not bashing my head against the wall about what did I do last night, if I even remember, right. Just those little moments that happen all the time. Noticing those things is a huge key to my daily sobriety. Yes.
So I think we might have been in the same meeting one day when I shared that my routine starts at 4:45 in the morning. Prayer, meditation, read some kind of spiritual, whether it's big book, another book that I'm reading is Titan Code, and other books that I have around here. Then I journal for about 10, 15 minutes. Then I jump on the 6 a.m. meeting, Zoo Crew 22. Excellent meeting at 6 a.m. in the morning. I jump in the shower, keep my camera off, of course, jump in the shower. Yeah, we can't have them. We do have some bombers in some of those meetings. So, but yeah, the Zoo Crew 22 has been a phenomenal part of my life because it starts my day. And when I first started getting sober back in 91 and 2000, I've been trying to stay sober for a long time. Put together about 15 years and then ended up thinking that I had arrived. I was traveling across overseas and ended up drinking. And it took me from 2016 till February 14th of 2023 to really get back in here and get some substantial recovery. I've had little pieces in between here and there, but the rooms, the practices, the journaling, the prayer, the meditation, the 12 steps, working with others. You know, I have another site called helpamofo.com. My sponsor used to always tell me at the end of our conversation, end of our text or whatever, he said, man, go help a mofo. And I said, okay.
It's a great name for a site.
It is. I have it. It's up. It's alive and running, and I'll send you a link to it before long. I'll put it in the thing down there. I've diverted here. Let me.
No,
okay.
Wait. I got to jump in here because you were talking about your 4:45 wake up. A book that I first got when I got back from detox was called the 5 a.m. Club, and that's totally what the book is about. It's the 5 a.m. wake up. First thing you do, exercise. 15 minutes, get your heart rate going a little bit. Second 15 minutes, journal, meditate. Third 15 minutes, that's when you start getting your mind geared up for the day. So that's when you might read something educational. I do Babel Spanish lessons is what I would do. And that's your power hour.
Okay.
3 by 15 minutes is your power hour right there. And then you're ready to go for the day, or 20 minutes a shot rather. So you're ready to go for the day then. And that's what then 6 o'clock, I'm getting in the shower and getting ready to roll. But that morning jolt, of course, after I made my bed first, but that morning jolt, it's a great way to start your day. And I can really, and that's strong. It's a strong practice.
It is. It is. It helps definitely. I need to incorporate the 15 minutes of exercise.
Yeah.
For some kind of reason.
It's not even like I'm not like running a marathon. I'm doing like kettlebells or just stretching, even whatever it is to just get my blood flowing.
Right. Well, I'm going to try to incorporate that in my life there. All right. How has your perspective on living life on life's terms evolved throughout your journey?
It goes with everything else. Life on life's terms has just become a very easy thing almost to do. I see things that are happening. I'm not as caught. Life on life's terms to me, for the most part, is living in the now.
Yes.
So I don't get caught up because I don't know what life's terms are going to be for me tomorrow, and I can't be pissed about what they were yesterday. Right. So if I'm going to live life on life's terms, it's what the terms are now. So awesome. That's the way that I think about living life on life's terms, and it keeps the anxiety and the regret and depression at bay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I often say that the only thing I can change in life is my attitude and outlook. So when the small things fall or when the big things fall, like you said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. We stay in the present, and that's today. So that's amazing that you would say that. You share that. It's a gift. Life's a gift. And probably in places that you've been, and I know places I've been, it's a gift for me because I wasn't supposed to come out. I just know it for a fact. I'm sure we can trade war stories for all of those things. But.
Yep.
Okay. Can you share a specific moment or an experience that tested your self-love and sobriety and how you overcame it?
I got 2 good ones. First one was my 6-month sobriety. I flew back down to Florida to speak at Daylight and do H&I and speak there. Excuse me. So we flew down to Florida. There was a trip to Italy that could have happened with a hockey team, but nothing panned out. So we're going to go to Florida. We're going to kick it up. We go down to West Palm, stay at the nicest place, stayed at the Breakers in West Palm. It was like totally amazing. Went and spoke on Thursday, had a great time. Went to leave on Friday, and everybody told us not to fly to Florida in September because it's hurricane season. We didn't have a hurricane. We had ridiculous thunderstorms that shut down Newark Airport, JFK, LaGuardia, Philly, all those airports shut down. So we can't get home from Florida now. So we're stuck in the airport all day Friday. Airports are my kryptonite. When I went to go to detox, I went there on a Saturday. My flight got delayed. I ended up getting too drunk, couldn't get on the flight. I had to go down on Sunday. So being stuck in an airport was a challenge. And then we got flight canceled on Saturday. And then we finally got a flight out on Sunday. Had to take an Uber from West Palm to Fort Lauderdale, catch a flight through Austin. So a travel nightmare.
Yes.
And all I thought about the whole time was, God, I would really, really love a drink. And then I thought about that very statement in my head. So this is 6 months sober, running, going to meetings, reading the book. And I said, did you just ask God? Did you say to God you wanted a drink? You got lost your mind, man. And that's what it flipped my thinking just like that, because I heard my inner self, right? The part that I had just started to learn to love, right? Was like, duh, like you listened. And and it was just like I felt that feeling of accomplishment, but it wasn't that hard because it happened so fast. But that's really where I could say, like, no, I love myself enough not to completely blow up that situation. Because if I'd been drinking during that time, I would have been in jail or dead.
Yes.
And it's just not. It would have not. So the thought of at the time, just that inkling of I could really use a drink right now, and my God and myself saying, no, you can't. The last thing you could use, or you could use it for all the wrong things. But that flash, and that that was a great feeling, and it made me feel really connected to my higher power and myself. The second time that I really felt my sobriety take not a huge leap forward, but I really felt its usefulness was we were going to see a Devils Rangers game, and it turned out to be the one at MetLife Stadium. So the big, huge stadium. We got our seats, they're great seats. We walk up to our seats. Somebody's sitting in them. Guys got legit tickets. They look just like mine. He's sitting in the same. We're like, okay. So we go down and start talking to the usher, and wait here for a second. Now, drunk Bill, former Bill, the guy I used to be, there would have been all kinds of people I was yelling at. I would have been looking for this person, like somebody. I would have been angry. I need a drink. Give me a shot. Like all those things would have been happening. Instead, I calmly asked the lady, what she would do, and you know what? I took suggestions. I listened, and I was calm, and we ended up. She came back with. They put us, to the sidebar for a drink. They bought my girlfriend a drink. Cran and Club don't cost nothing, and then she took us to better seats than we had. And it was one of those instances of, you know what? If you let God, who was right, and you were talking about when God's mentioned, I see a lot of people point to the sky.
Yes.
When I hear that word mentioned, I point to someone else in the group. And that's what I thought of when God's acting through that woman right there.
Absolutely.
And I let her, and I let God be there for me, and he was there.
Yes, indeed. I had an old friend that said, you're going to do it God's way, or you're going to do it God's way. One way or the other, you're going to do it God's way. There's no other way to do it. So appreciate that. All right. In what ways has your childhood trauma, if any, played a role in your recovery and self-love journey?
I would have trouble describing anything from my childhood as trauma.
No worries.
There's people who would, if you were going to psychoanalyze me, say that the trauma was I was exposed to alcohol and drinking all this time, and I don't feel like I was traumatized by that. Certainly affected me, but to call it trauma would be a stretch.
Awesome. Absolutely. I started drinking around 8 years old. I was inappropriately touched at an early age. And I just found out that some of that stuff evolved through journaling and everything. And,
Yeah.
the feeling was so elusive. And I started finding coping mechanisms with alcohol. And by junior high, it was weed. By high school, it was weed, alcohol, and sex, and anything else I could find. And I was a bad actor for a while, man. I had all of these coping skills and coping things that was harmful, selfishness and self-centeredness. Give it to me. I want it now, and I want it the way I want it.
Mm.
And so this time when I came in, fortunately, I had good counselors, and I took some extra time, some shadow work to find out what was actually going on with me. I won't say that trauma made me an alcoholic, but it did give me the coping skills to alcohol was a coping skill for me at the early age. So
And
appreciate your honesty.
yeah, well, I really appreciate you sharing that way too, because that's something that I'm finding is, as you know, as I get more sober and as I listen to more people like you, uh, what you just said makes a lot of sense, because as my sober mind, as the mind that is vetting through all these character defects and flaws,
Uh,
thinks about cause and effect for different things, there's different things that come up from my childhood that I think about and say, was I traumatized when my younger sister was making fun of me because she reached puberty before me? Like,
right, right.
like those things that I really hadn't thought about for a gazillion years. Did they affect my self-esteem? Did they affect, what ways did they affect me? And how did I deal with those things? Did I,
Yes.
and drink wasn't involved at that point, but the actions I may have took at that time, being a goofball, doing something crazy like jumping off the roof, any of those, uh, you know, attention-seeking
Yes. Yep.
activities that would become booze later on,
Yes, most
triggered
definitely.
by that kind of instance. So
Most definitely. Well, just another sidebar that I can't determine whose trauma is what and how deep it is or how deep it's not. I know for me that was traumatizing for me. A lot of other things. I was bullied. I was the youngest.
mm-hmm.
A whole bunch of other things. And there's an author out there, Bernie Brown, I want to say her name is, out of Texas. I've read quite a bit of her stuff and several other books that I've really done some deep diving into trauma to find out, how did this really affect me? In some kind of way, the internal clock is interrupted. Your natural path of growth is interrupted when a traumatic situation, bullying, things of that nature, sexual, verbal abuse, dad alcoholic, parent an alcoholic or an addict, or all of these things can be trauma. And the way it was explained to me was your body remembers that, although I don't remember it. And that's why I always tell and share with my sponsees or anyone that there's a nerve that goes from your fingertip to the base of your brain. And as long as my sponsor even told me this, as long as all of these memories and stuff is running around in my mind, it can be fictional. But the minute I put it on paper, it becomes fact. And
Mm-hmm.
now I can do something about that. So it's that is in itself, trauma is a wider range of things. 60% of Americans suffer from some form of trauma. And it's just amazing. Most alcoholics have that in their history. But I'm glad that you have got through that and life is good and you're here staying sober and life is good. Yes.
So
How do you prioritize self-care and self-love in your daily life as someone in long-term recovery?
it's it's again back a lot to the things that I put out for myself to do, the schedule of things that I like to do to decompress at times. The journaling, the exercise, the things like that are fine. One of the things that I did almost as soon as I got back was I joined something called Stretch Lab,
Mm,
where we go for half an hour and they do assisted stretching. It was something that I called my sobriety bonus. Well, there was a heck of a lot of money that was being spent on alcohol every month, I could put $189 into getting the stretch every week,
Yes.
for the month, like a month for,
Mhm.
so it was nothing. So I started doing that. So my day on Saturday is, go and sit out and relax and have coffee and get that meditative vibe and that Zen feeling and relax. And, so those times that I spend to relax and exercise are key forms of self-care for me. Mental more than anything, just to get out of my, because I'm not getting a Olympic class workout riding my bike around town and going from place to place, but I'm getting out and feeling the wind on my face and it feels good.
Awesome.
So, those kind of things. And, I guess things that maybe I take for granted sometimes that are included in self-care, making sure that I have a shave. Like I look at myself now and it goes back to that whole, you're worth something. It goes
Yes.
back to that feeling that I have in myself that somebody loves you and you get to, love other people too.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. What advice would you give the others who are struggling with maintaining their sobriety while also practicing self-love?
Remember to always place the mission first. Without sobriety, I got nothing else.
Absolutely.
So I got to put that first.
Yes.
That's why I prioritize my meetings. That's why I prioritize the journaling time. That's why I prioritize the times that I need to decompress, because life is always going to be difficult when I'm working and but I guess the best thing I would say is start off listening to what everybody tells you. Don't debate. I had 2 years. I had 2 years clean before, and I had an answer for every single step about why that's stupid, why it doesn't work, And I've done it. I did it before. I've done it wrong so many times, and that was the wrong, the unwillingness, the lack of acceptance, the lack of humility, all those things, they threw me off every time. But there, they say in the book, there is a solution. It's right
There is
here,
a solution.
right?
Yes.
And it's not easy. I, Anybody who tells you it's easy is lying, because there are some hard things that have to be done to do this right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's simple. And by that, I mean the instructions are straightforward. You find somebody that's done it before to take you through it. And you learn that the features of the program and the 12 steps or whatever program you're working, from what the limited experience, limited knowledge I have of some other programs.
Right.
The factor is always to be a better person, to be
Mm-hmm.
happy. And the substance or whatever the addiction is, could be a million things, is never the problem. So in early sobriety, what I found was the advice I got was come out of the facility, go to IOP.
Yes.
I didn't even know what IOP was. I walked in, they told me I was going to be there 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, 6 to 9, Monday through Thursday. I did that for 3 months.
Yes.
This is because that's what they told me to do. When I had issues with, things that I didn't like at the detox, I didn't like in IOP, because there was people there who were always screaming for their meds and this. Like, I can let that affect me, or I can choose not to. That's what I
Absolutely.
learned.
Yes.
So in early sobriety, what I put first was my meetings and doing what I was told to do. The meetings were one of those things. The other thing that I had to overcome, and this took place after I had been back from rehab and doing IOP for a month and a half or so, that little voice in my head started going, weren't you selfish enough before? Now you're selfish with your recovery. Now you have to be at this meeting all the time. Why don't you take a night off? Kathy really misses you. You should take a night off. You should take, you should take a couple nights off. That's what the Alcoholic Mind started telling me. Yeah. And then I let sanity come back in and said, no.
Yes. That's the insane side.
That's what it took early on.
Yeah,
right now, sometimes I worry, am I going to be like that 5 years from now? And I can't worry about 5 years from now. We're not worried about tomorrow. So I'm not worried about 5 years from now. But what I do know is this is working for me. And I'm not changing anything. You don't fix it if it's not broke.
That's right.
I spent enough years not fixing something that was completely broke. I'm not going to mess with something that's working.
It's something in the book that says the primary purpose for us is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. It's one of the primary purpose. And then there's another portion in there that says we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. This is the first requirement of Alcoholics Anonymous, that we had to quit playing God. So I'm referencing the Big Book of Alcoholics, which is the basic text for the 12-step program. The first 164 pages have not been changed from 1939 to present. Those first 164. And there is so much impactful information in there. There is a solution, like you mentioned, how it works, the family afterwards, agnostics, the vision for you. I can just go, the doctor's opinion. I can just go on and on. To the wives, yes, to the employer. Wow. So the book is just jam-packed with knowledge from the 39s that read like a lawyer wrote it. And that's the purpose of having someone take you through the steps that have been through them before, or a sponsor, as we reference to them. And I'll put a lot of the references and stuff that we're talking about here in the 12 steps based on the recovery program. So that's great advice, to tell an alcoholic to do something. So we try to say that we suggest that you should do it. And somebody said taking the steps, and we suggest you take the steps, is like the same reference to is if you're in an airplane and it's going down and they suggest you use the parachute. That ain't a suggestion. You better put the doggone parachute on. So I appreciate that. We're going to get through. It's just amazing. So many things and slogans and sayings and the readings that I've learned in the 12 steps of Alcoholics and working the steps with a sponsor. It's just catapulted me to the fifth dimension. It says that as well in the book. So anyway, let me quit quoting the book.
It's funny though, because I have a friend who we've shared a lot of drinks together. And he came to me. We're on a fishing trip again, like another, everybody's drinking on a fishing trip. Like I got a 12-pack of Pepsi with me, so like I can crack the can open, I can crush it like Jaws. But I'm talking to my friend, and he starts telling me why he can't do AA. They make you do this, they make you do that, they make you do this. I was like, stop! They don't make you do anything. You're not getting breathalyzed when you walk through the door. There's no drug test. They're there. Like if you want help, you can come get it.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna make you do anything. They're gonna tell you like, okay, listen, it's not recommended that you decide to take the weekends off and drink.
Right.
It's not recommended. It's not recommended that you do certain things. Right. It's not recommended that you keep your faults and fears inside of you. It's not recommended that you lie to people. Okay, well, these seem like pretty good recommendations. They're not going to make you not lie to people, but guess what? Your soul's going to feel a lot better if you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you don't do it, I mean, it ain't up to them. If you don't do it, you're going to get what you get. They say half measures availed us nothing.
Absolutely. One of my favorite statements in the promises too, or in how it works.
That's it. Half measures availed us nothing. We got a couple of more questions. How has the concept of forgiveness, both of oneself and others, been instrumental in your journey of self-love and recovery?
It's huge. I feel like the ability to forgive others is one of my biggest faults is that I'm judgmental, and I can just put you in a box as soon as I see you. I know who you are, and I do that. I still struggle to not do that.
Absolutely.
And keep an open mind. So wait, what was the question again?
How does the concept of forgiveness,
Oh,
both
right,
of
forgiveness.
oneself and others, an
One
instrumental?
of the we were talking about this at another meeting that I was at this week, and the speaker was talking about the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And what he brought up was the parts that basically everybody just glosses over, right? You say the Lord's Prayer, people just say it and get the words out, right?
Right.
For, as we forgive others who trespass against us.
Right.
And that line is just, it says it all, because it comes back to that fact of feeling that we're all one.
Mm.
So when I can understand or I can empathize that another person is hurting,
Yeah.
or maybe I can empathize or I can understand that the other person might not be hurting because they don't even realize that they're sick. I don't know. I can't make those judgments, but
Right.
not trying to understand them and realistically and truthfully forgiving them
Mm-hmm.
is a key to my inner peace as well. So it goes hand in hand that when I blame somebody else for how I'm feeling, or I blame somebody else for something they did, knowing everything or nothing about it's hurting me.
Right.
That blame and that anger, that feeling that I have towards somebody else is just as bad for me to have.
Wow.
So I got to forgive myself for thinking those things to some
Mm-hmm.
regard. And that's different than chastising myself for thinking those things, right?
Absolutely.
So that feeling of forgiveness for myself flows both ways.
Mm.
I guess the best way to put it.
Absolutely. Wow. Great analogy. I would share something on that, but I'm gonna let it go by. The very last question, and then I'll give you a moment to, share any last insights. And I believe this is more geared towards me because when I was developing the questions, it says, "What does the phrase 'you love you' mean to you in the context of your sobriety and self-love journey?" And I think I shared a little bit with you about the "you love you" and how it came up. For me, I was journaling and just found out a lot of stuff about myself. So expound a little bit on "you love you" and sobriety and some closing comments.
Well, I think that the way that you came up with that concept is another one of those uh, divine things that
Yes.
happens where God, the universe just intersperses itself and it hits you and you start to understand that feeling. The the you love you, I think to me is important because like I said, it's the back and forth, it's the flow that I have with the rest of the universe and the people around me and the things around me. I mean, how many times did you ever like stub your toe on something, you curse at a chair, cursing at like inanimate objects, right? It's like,
Right, right,
so part of that, okay, like I don't have to forgive the chair for being in my way, but let's face it, I was the one that was being clumsy, right?
right,
So,
right.
you know, when I think of like the love that I have for myself, it's it's truthful, and that's my that's that 10th step process that goes on at
Yes,
night, or any other meditative or your bedtime cleaning of the day's ledgers
right.
that I do. That um, that's the last part of the self love, is that I'm admitting to myself what I did wrong. I'm not
Mhm.
going to be angry at myself that I did something wrong, but I'm going to say that I'm going to do better. And the reason I'm going to do better, as much as being good and nice and helping other alcoholics and all these things are good, but they're good for me.
Yes.
And that's the me loving me again. And it's not in a selfish way for once. It's in a
For
giving
once.
way, because the giving is what gives me.
Wow. I don't think I could have said it much better, man. The unselfishness of selfishness. Because if I don't stay in recovery, then I'm no good to anyone else. So I have to love myself enough to take care of myself, to work the steps. And you mentioned 10, 11, and 12. Well, you mentioned the 10th step. The 10th step says, as if we've done our work well by this time, we would have ceased fighting alcohol. The desire to drink will have just seemingly went away. So I'm always sharing with individuals, like, man, just work the steps. Trust me. If you get through them, the obsession will leave. I'll be a better person. Because if I'd have got what I thought I wanted to get out of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have cut myself short. So it's such a revealing. They say the 12 steps is for people who didn't adhere to the first 10. So we got 12 more. Anyway, man, it's been great chopping it up with you. I appreciate you.
I got one more thing I want to share with you too.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking about this. So we were talking about how God puts things in front of you, and reading over the questions and thinking about our call about the podcast. I'm reading a couple different books, and don't you know, both of the books that I was reading, there's a meditation book and the book called A Road Less Traveled. We're talking about love. We're talking about love. And I'll just leave with this: is the Road Less Traveled described falling in love as something that we're not in control of. It's a biological trick designed to keep the species procreating. So falling in love is designed to get us together, and think that we're right for each other and go through that process. That's why divorce is so prevalent, because falling in love and being in love and loving are different things.
Absolutely.
So I looked back and thought about my sobriety, and I could say that when I was freshly sober, that was the process of falling in love with myself, because I just met. And I started to realize that, okay, wait, you're not a complete jerk. You're not those things that people think of you. And I fell in love with myself.
Wow.
Then you move along, and they refer to that as the pink cloud, right? The honeymoon period. When you get past that, you're not falling in love anymore. You have to figure out how to be loving. And that's the point where I am now, where I do these things that we talked about to make sure I keep loving myself. Done falling in love, but now it's my love of myself. It's the love that I have for this life, a love that I have for the universe and the people in it. That is what gets me there.
That is awesome, man. What a great way to close it down, man. I appreciate you coming. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had an hour worth of conversation with Billy from Philly, and he's just shared his experience, strength, and hope with us about self-love, everything self-love and recovery. And I really appreciate you coming out, taking the time out of your day. We'll meet in the cloud of Zoom, and hopefully I'll get down there one day to hang out with you.
Maybe I'll get out to Pittsburgh too.
Oh, well, I'm here, sir, and I'm trying to get out of Pittsburgh. I'll be down in Florida the first week in September.
Okay.
Over by the Tampa area. I'm not sure how far you are from Tampa.
Oh, well, I'm in New Jersey now, so.
No, I'll be in Florida come September for about a week.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, appreciate you, all the information and knowledge and strength that you provided with us, man. And just keep doing what you're doing, one day at a time, man. We stay sober.
You too, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was great.
Awesome.